Landing a veteran offensive lineman could immediately change the game for the New Orleans Saints offense.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we've got another offseason scenario for you, taking a look at offensive line and wide receiver. We'll take a look at a veteran offensive lineman and day two wide receiver, followed by a day two offensive lineman and free agent wide receiver, and see which one the Saints fans like best. We'll take a look at David Edwards from the Buffalo Bills, along with Elijah Sarratt in the second round, the wide receiver out of Stanford. And then we'll flip the script and look at Keylan Rutledge, the offensive lineman out of Georgia Tech, as well as signing Alec Pierce, the underrated wide receiver from the Indianapolis Colts. We got all that for you on today's extra episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Thanks for helping us get here as we bring you your team every day. The New Orleans Saints wide receivers are, of course, a big part of the conversation this offseason, but so is the offensive line. And so addressing one of those two positions, if not both, but that's not the scenario we're playing with today, addressing at least one of those positions in free agency seems like a wise move to allow the Saints to be able to go best player available in the opening rounds of the NFL draft. Now, we're not talking about the opening round of the NFL draft today. We're going to go into day two. And that's why I want to start off with what I think would be a solid pairing for the New Orleans Saints. That's landing David Edwards or Dave Edwards from the Buffalo Bills as their offensive line, free agent signing, big ticket guy there. And then Elijah Sarratt, the wide receiver out of Stanford in the second round. So dealing with this pairing just for today, right? These aren't the only proposals that we'll do and everything. We did a different one yesterday. We're doing another one today. We'll do another one with Breece Hall tomorrow, the running back out of New York. But I do think that David Edwards is worth your time to make sure that you are aware of him going into this upcoming free agent cycle. Allowed only 32 pressures and 4 sacks last season. That's not bad. It's not spectacular either, but not bad at all, especially at the NFL level. His market value right now is about $19.9 million, so right around the $20 million mark. I picked these two veteran players intentionally because Alec Pierce is right around that same margin as well. But the Saints desperately need to fix their interior offensive line and address that area right there in front of their young quarterback in Tyler Shough. Solidifying the interior of the offensive line should be one of the top priorities this offseason, and a veteran free agency signing would get that done with NFL experience on tape, proven value, all of that. And then, looking at the other side of this scenario, if the Saints don't go for a wide receiver in free agency, land an offensive lineman, go for a running back or a defender in the first round of the NFL draft, the second and third rounds of the NFL draft are still fruitful at wide receiver. And one of the names that I like the most is Stanford wideout Elijah Sarratt. He's not a big-time separator, but it's fine. He doesn't need to separate. He is one of those guys that will go up and make those big-time catches, a 50-50 ball guy, a contested catch guy, a jump ball guy, just an I'm better than anybody I line up in front of type of guy. His playing demeanor and his attitude as a wide receiver, which are the things that translate the most going from college to the NFL as a wideout, are exactly what you want in a guy that's going to contribute. Remember, the Saints aren't necessarily looking for a #1 wide receiver right now. They've got Devon Vele. They've got Chris Olave. We talked a bit about Jalen Polk in yesterday's, or actually in today's earlier episode, and we're going to do so again in tomorrow's episode because people loved the Jalen Polk conversation, so we'll go into my film study around him. So I do think that the Saints are in a position here to where they probably feel like adding talent to the wide receiver room is important, but not getting a new #1 wide receiver or a new X receiver or anything like that being a huge deal for them. Instead, go for the best wide receiver that's the best player available at the best available time. And Elijah Sarratt, who had 65 receptions for 830 yards and 15 receiving touchdowns last year, costing you just day two draft compensation, I think puts the Saints in a pretty good position should they decide that they want to go after him. So you get the veteran offensive lineman that's going to be plug and play, ready to go in your offensive line to help to buy your quarterback more time. And you get the big-bodied, physical wide receiver that you can add to Devon Vele and Chris Olave and potentially Jalen Polk and other guys that quarterback can now have the time to throw to. I think this is a really, really good situation. I think getting an experienced veteran offensive lineman has to be a top priority for New Orleans this offseason. And to me, David Edwards might be the part that sets this over the top. But before we make our decision, let's jump over and take a look at the other side of the coin. Alec Pierce, the Indianapolis Colts wide receiver, set to hit free agency. What if the Saints were to pair him and Keylan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech? We'll break it down as we continue on with this extra episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Have you ever hired somebody that didn't quite check all of the boxes? Well, thanks to our friends over at Indeed, you don't have to worry about that ever again. If you're hiring, never forget, Indeed is all you need. Indeed sponsored jobs is going to make it so you don't have to worry about getting lost in the muck with all of those other job openings. Instead, you're going to be able to be thrust right to the top of the page so that you can find all of those fantastic hires that you are looking for, that are looking for the same job that you have to offer them. And according to Indeed sponsored jobs posted directly to Indeed will end up getting you more than 90% more likely an opportunity to report a hire than a non-sponsored job. So spend more time interviewing the candidates that you want to talk to that check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners to this show get $75 in Indeed sponsored job credits if you head over to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. Today's episode of Locked On Saints also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The Winter Olympics are here, and there's no better place to get in on all of the action than with FanDuel today, because you're going to be able to take advantage of everything on the biggest sports stage every 4 years, all thanks to our friends at FanDuel. Look, it just makes sense. From medal counts to individual honors as well, you can get in on everything and find your angle for the sports that you care about the most. The U.S. right now, second highest odds for most gold medals, second highest odds for most medals in total. Everything from the drama of curling to the excitement of speed skating, the physicality of those hockey games, and even some of those niche events that you know and love. They're going to make sure that your Olympic experience is engaging from beginning to end. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better place to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. You can do so at FanDuel.com today. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrap it up today's offseason scenario with a look at the veteran wide receiver and the rookie offensive lineman. So we're swapping out going into free agency and getting David Edwards with going into free agency and getting Alec Pierce, the Indianapolis Colts wide receiver, former Cincinnati Bearcat, and then going into the draft, and instead of taking Elijah Sarratt in the second round because you've addressed wide receiver, go and get Keylan Rutledge, the physical, gritty, offensive lineman out of Georgia Tech. Now, I want to be clear here. One of the best case scenarios is that you sign David Edwards, draft whoever you want, and also end up with Keylan Rutledge. That's a fantastic situation for New Orleans as well. So obviously there are many other possibilities here, but we're just playing with scenarios and having some fun here for the offseason stuff. So we're going to keep it with just these two versus these two. And so Alec Pierce, 47 receptions. 47 receptions. Doesn't sound like a lot, but let's just 1,003 receiving yards on the year in 2025 with the Indianapolis Colts. Had 6 receiving touchdowns. The reason why I stress that catch count and that yardage count is because 21.3 yards per catch is kind of insane. Kind of insane, especially for a guy that's like considered a big-bodied, physical wide receiver, him going out there and picking up yards after catch, him going out there and being a threat in the intermediate and deep levels. All of that ends up being a part of his game well beyond just what he does as a physical pass catcher. I mentioned that his price tag is very similar to David Edwards. David Edwards is at $1.9 million. Alec Pierce's is at $20.2 million. So you're looking at roughly $20 million per year in terms of what the market value is anticipated to be, not actually, but is anticipated to be. We'll see what it actually is going into this one. Now, we should acknowledge that the Indianapolis Colts could easily just throw a franchise tag on Alec Pierce and then he never hits the free agent market. So we have to acknowledge that, of course, that's possible. But again, we're working with scenarios here. So you get the big-bodied physical receiver that can also go out there and get you some work done in terms of the deep yardage, pick up some yards after catch for you as well. He's not super dynamic with the football in his hands, but he's really good at getting north and south quickly and picking up that extra yardage. Now let's jump over to the draft, and we go offensive line, since we went wide receiver for the veteran, and we're looking at the offensive lineman out of Georgia Tech that surrendered only 6 pressures and 0 sacks in 2024. Now, this happens all the time. I don't know if it's that NCAA pressures are counted differently than NFL pressures, or if it's just the nature of the game, but a lot of times we get these guys coming into the NFL out of college that never allowed a sack or didn't allow a sack or only allowed 1 in 3 years or only allowed, single digit pressures or whatever. And then you check a different source and then all of a sudden it's 16 pressures instead of 6 pressures and everything like that. So we have to keep that kind of in mind, that like all these pressure numbers aren't typically accurate when it comes to college. But Keylan Rutledge is a dog, and there's no doubt about that. He's one of the most physical players in this year's draft, loves to finish plays, put guys in the dirt, is really, really aggressive and tenacious, nonstop motor, all that. He's, I think, going to be a great offensive lineman in the NFL. He kind of falls under the same category of guys that I really, really liked in recent years. The guy that ended up with the Giants, or the guy that ended up with the Lions, another guy that ended up with the Lions too, and Frank Ragnow, who I liked years ago, Quinn Miners, who I liked years ago, all that, like Jalen Sundell, who I liked last year, or maybe the year before last. Like all of these guys have panned out, because of their play style and their tenacity and their motor, the fuel that they have, all those things. And Keylan Rutledge is just the latest, really physical, I'm, bigger, better, stronger than you type of offensive lineman coming in out of Georgia Tech. He would also be a day 2 guy, played super well in the Senior Bowl. I don't know if that's going to impact his draft stock too much. It could propel him into the first round. We'll see. We never know. Some teams get froggy and they leap, right? We always say that. And so we could see Keylan Rutledge jump there, but we're thinking about him as a day 2 guy along with Elijah Sarratt. And so again, the pairing being veteran wide receiver Alec Pierce, rookie offensive lineman Keylan Rutledge, or veteran offensive lineman David Edwards, or rookie wide receiver Elijah Sarratt. And I got to tell you, I lean towards the veteran offensive line rookie wide receiver path. I think rookie wide receivers pan out. That's fine. That works. I think that veteran offensive linemen work though, and I don't know that the Saints have had necessarily the track record of the draft and develop at offensive line, particularly on the interior, that you'd like to hang your hat on just yet, even by going with first round players in those situations. And so I lean more, they've done well at tackle. I'll give them that. So I lean more veteran O-line, rookie wideout, and the masses agree. 75% over on the YouTube poll, 60+% over on the Twitter X poll, and then 75% as well over on the Discord poll. So the folks agree. Let us know what you think as well. Coming up in tomorrow's morning episode, I'm going to tell you what I learned about Jalen Polk from my wide receiver film study. Let's dive into that in tomorrow's show. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust me, that nation, I'll holla at you.